Hey there, darling. Welcome to the Farmer's Table. My name is Jess, and today we are going to make biscuits. But we're not going to just make biscuits, we're going to talk about biscuits and just how very good they are and what a staple they are in a scratch kitchen. Oh, my first ever video on this channel was my just like basic southern biscuit recipe, and I'll put a link to that video down below. Today I'm going to make them in the food processor, which is a little faster. In that video I made everything by hand so that people who didn't have equipment could follow along. But most of the time I am making them in the food processor, because by using the food processor you can turn out a batch of biscuits with very little forethought and very little hands-on time. I do have a cast iron pan here. This is a 12-inch skillet. If you don't have a cast iron pan, you can totally bake these in like a baking dish or whatever. I do like to use something with walls because I think that keeps them a little flakier and softer rather than getting crusty. But if you like a harder outside, totally use a flat baking pan. Y'all, I got an ad sucked me in. I haven't bought a cast iron pan in a long time because they last forever. And so I still have the one I bought when I was 19 years old when I moved into my first apartment. But the Dolly Parton line came out and I had to buy a pan with Dolly's face on it. I could see the light of the clear blue morning. It's a fitting pan for biscuits, don't you think? All right, so before we move forward in mixing our ingredients, I need to start this. This is a buttermilk biscuit recipe, and it calls for 1 cup plus 1 to 2 tablespoons of milk. Basically 1 cup just doesn't quite cut it as far as getting the right texture. I don't ever get like a tablespoon out and actually measure this. I just go a little bit over a cup. And the recipe calls for buttermilk. 1 cup plus a couple tablespoons of buttermilk. I don't buy buttermilk. I don't have buttermilk. Occasionally I will have milk that has gone a little sour because we have our own cows and raw milk, but even that I don't often have. So what I always do is I get my cup and a tablespoon of milk, and I just add about a tablespoon of lemon juice to it. You can also do white vinegar for this. When you put acid in milk, it causes the curd to separate from the whey, and that's essentially what's happening here. And it's going to give us the acidity and the tang of buttermilk without actually having buttermilk. I usually like to do this and let it sit for like 5 minutes or so before I mix it in, just to give it time to work through. So for those of you watching from other countries, I do want to clear up the confusion that happens around the word biscuit. It gets lost in translation a little bit. In a lot of countries, a biscuit is what we would call here in the States a cookie, and here a biscuit is not a cookie. It's more like what you would probably call a scone, but it's also not a scone. So a biscuit is a bit of bread baked individually, so 1 serving is 1 biscuit. And the idea here and what we're going to do in cooking it is that we want the inside of our biscuit to be really soft, preferably flaky, with layers and just really tender bread inside. And the outside, the way we're going to cook this is that it's going to cook quicker on the outside and essentially create a crisp outer layer. I wouldn't even call it a crust. It's not a thick outer layer, but we want the outside of our biscuit to essentially trap steam in so that we have the right texture all the way through. No matter what you call it, biscuits are delicious and extremely versatile in a from scratch kitchen. My favorite thing about them is that you don't have to plan ahead. I mean, there's no rise time. This is just like a mix it up, bake it. When I need to make like a fast breakfast, or I mean any time of day meal, I can throw biscuits together really fast. So I've got my food processor here, and in this I'm gonna put 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour. You can also use bread flour. As mentioned in that other video, I did this by hand. If you do not have any sort of like equipment like a food processor, this does make it really fast. I'm gonna leave my flour container out because I'm gonna need some to roll these out. Into this, I'm gonna put 2 tablespoons of baking powder. I buy this Bob's Red Mill baking powder bulk and get multiple packages at a time on Amazon. This is aluminum free, and if you're gonna buy the aluminum free stuff, this saves you money over time, and it comes in bags that are sealed on the top, so I never have it go bad or anything like that. Teaspoon of salt too. And now into this we're gonna do 4 ounces or 1 stick of very cold butter. Now, I usually just pull this out of the fridge and use it. If you are not using a food processor, you can put your butter in the freezer if you've, ahead of time, and then take it out and grate it with like a cheese grater. My aunt and uncle taught me that trick, but this is the step that the food processor makes a lot easier. I just cut this into little cubes like this size and sprinkle them throughout here. Now, the purpose of using very cold fat in making biscuits is that these are going to steam power our biscuits. We want that crisp outer and fluffy soft inner on the biscuits, and that's why we've got a 425-degree oven. That's a hot oven, but we want this butter to stay solid throughout the mixing process and be like little pockets of cool, that when we put it in the hot oven, it's going to release a lot of steam as it melts, essentially steaming the inside of the bread, and it's going to give us that great biscuit texture. So put the lid on, and then I'm going to pulse this, which is going to chop that butter up real fine. And this effectively creates this really sandy texture. You can feel the little hard balls of butter in here, like there's one right there, but they're fully incorporated. I'm going to grab my buttermilk. It's really full. It doesn't really look that different. Sometimes you'll see like a little bit of curds in there. Sometimes you'll be able to see the separation. And I'm going to pour a little bit in that. It's just so I'm not spilling it everywhere. Probably should have sprung for the bigger measuring cup. And here, I don't want to overmix this. I don't want my butter to melt. I want it to stay cold. So too much mixing, obviously, is friction going to heat it up. But I'm gonna start by pulsing this and just pouring this milk in until it is incorporated. Yeah, you can see that. You see that separation there of the curds in the way. Okay, don't worry about mixing it a ton. We just want it incorporated. Now I want to put a little bit of flour down. Be generous with it. The dough can take it. And I'm going to turn this dough out on top of the flour. Because unlike a lot of things that you're going to bake, these do not require room temperature butter. They do not require yeast or any sort of rising. And that means that when I'm not shooting a video, whenever it's just like, oh, I need to make something, I can have the biscuit dough put together in the pan ready to go before the oven is even done preheating. It's very fast. This right here is the most important step of the process, and you guys know if you've been watching me, I don't like making a mess on the counters. I will knead things in the bowl all day long, but putting your biscuits out on a surface, it's worth it for the result. So we want to take our dough and kind of just start folding it in on itself. Remember, we want this cold. We don't want to waste a lot of kneading here. Don't want to overwork it, but fold it into itself a couple of times. Make sure it's not going to stick. You've got plenty of flour here. And fold your dough into kind of like a rectangle. And then we're going to start, and we want to do this at least 4 or 5 times. Fold it in half and press it down. Again, fold it in half and then press it down. This is creating layers in our biscuits. Let's do it one more time. My dough still feels really cold and really nice. Again, I'm not working it a ton here. I'm just folding. Okay. All right. That's good. Now we're going to roll this. You want it to be at least 3/4 of an inch. You could even stop at an inch. Oh, this is a small batch. And I have a smaller cutter. Depends on what I'm making these for. This is a 3-inch cutter. This is what we use for what we call cat head biscuits here in the South. And it's simply because they're big as a cat's head. So that's what this is. I also have a 2-inch cutter. And when I'm making breakfast for a lot of people and I'm trying to make sure the food spreads, I usually cut them a little bit smaller. So we're going to start here. You can also use a mason jar lid if you do not have cutters. Okay, take the bits here and we could get 2 more out of this. These are going to be not as pretty. That's no problem. We just call them rustic. Yeah. And a lot of times I'll take that last bit of dough, and instead of trying to cut it, I just piece it together to make one last biscuit. My kids have all started hovering. They come up, biscuits? You making biscuits? Just keep circling through. Now, I told you I was going to give you some options today. I will tell you, the PC biscuit, the one with all the bits in the end, it does typically fall apart. Now, this is where biscuit dough can take you many places. And if I'm ever in a pinch for a fast dinner, biscuit dough is just a go-to, because like I said, I mean, I can make it in no time. I can get from, I should make biscuits to this point in 10 minutes or so. So recently I made like a biscuits and sausage gravy bake, where I browned some sausage in the pan, sprinkled some flour on it, mixed the milk in to make a good loose gravy, and then at this point of making biscuits, I just dropped them all over the top and baked it, and then voila, biscuits and gravy, very hands off. You can take this dough and make like a pot pie filling, put the biscuits on top and bake it, and you've got essentially a biscuit pot pie. You can take this dough and press it out into muffin tins, make a quiche egg mix, and fill that, and you essentially have biscuit quiches. So you can get extremely creative with using the dough at this point, just cooking it with other things. Oh, pray for me. It's right in front of my face. This is what I was looking for. I'm going to grease my cast iron pan. Got my handy dandy oil sprayer here. I get asked about this a lot. Anything that I mention, I'll try to put links to mentioned products. If I can find links for them, I will put them. If they're not, you know, if it's something I thrifted or I can't find, then I'm sorry. But if, like I mentioned, the pan and things, I'll go through when I edit the video and compile a list of links. You just want to oil your pan and put these out. You know, they can be touching a little bit. They're going to spread a little bit. Mostly they're going to raise up. One recipe here fills a 12-inch cast iron pan with cat head biscuits, so big ones. If I'm feeding a crowd, I'll double this recipe. It still fits in my food processor, and I will use the 2-inch cutter, as I mentioned, and I'll use a 14-inch cast iron pan. And I can fill that, and I have to pack them in a little bit closer together, but I can make that whole pan of biscuits with a double recipe. And that feeds, it makes somewhere in the realm of like 20 or so 2-inch biscuits if you double it. So if you're feeding a crowd, that's the way to go, because it's still really fast. All right, now I've got a few tablespoons of melted butter, and we're gonna just drizzle this along the top of these. If you're wanting to use less butter and get the same effect, you could just brush it on. And now I'm gonna stick these in the 425-degree oven for, I set the timer for 18 minutes. They can take a little bit more than that, 18 to 20 minutes or so. Now, ways that we use biscuits. Get a cup of tea for me to Bubba Gump biscuits right here and tell you all the ways. They're so versatile. As mentioned, you can use them, you know, in recipes, baking as part of the recipe. But obviously, very commonly used for breakfast. We will put butter and jam on them. We make our jams here. I think the last video I put up was strawberry jam, and they shine that way. But also, cat head biscuit sandwiches are kind of like a huge thing here in the South, and that is a very common breakfast for us. Very hearty, stick to your ribs breakfast. We eat a lot more of that in the winter, but it's great in the summer, and you can make them, wrap them up, and take them with you. If you're like getting in the car and having to be somewhere, you can make them the day ahead, put them in the fridge, and then heat them up. Usually we'll do fried eggs, but you can totally do like a big pan of scrambled eggs and use some of that. And then some sort of meat like bacon or sausage patties, and then a piece of cheese. So bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit. Oh, ham is also very good, sliced ham. Hot honey biscuit, so if you've got some fried chicken, like if you made fried chicken for dinner or something like that, and then put hot honey and fried chicken on a biscuit, that's a fantastic biscuit sandwich. Obviously that's not health food, but you know what? I don't believe in good and bad foods. I believe that we choose nourishing foods most of the time so that we can eat hot honey chicken biscuits when we want, and I'll feel a dang thing bad about it. One thing that I really like to do is to, you know, obviously I'll make biscuits for breakfast, then we'll have some left over, and I will slice them and put like Nutella or some sort of like chocolate hazelnut spread and sliced bananas, wrap that up, or you can do like peanut butter or almond butter and honey and wrap that up. And like if I'm going on like a zoo day with my kids and I want to take some snacks, that's a really great snack to be able to take with us. We'll also do peanut butter and jelly biscuits. And another good one is like if you're making cowboy candy, that's something I've shared. Ham and cream cheese and cowboy candy in a biscuit is really, really good. And then of course, if you're the kind of family that likes to have like bread with your dinner, whenever you're making a big deep meal, as evidence, this is a really easy bread to pull together, and it can go with any kind of meal. It's great with soup, great with anything where you need to be able to like sop up a gravy or a sauce, or if you're making something that's like roasted chicken and you've got some different veggies and stuff like that. If the folks in your family like making a sandwich out of things, my family loves to make a sandwich out of things, you know, I'll serve biscuits so that they can put their roasted chicken and their veggies together and eat it like a sandwich on a biscuit. Also, I don't usually freeze uncooked biscuits simply because it is so fast to put the dough together and make them. But if you wanted to save yourself the time, or let's say you don't need a whole batch, you can make a large amount of biscuits, and at the point of cutting them out, instead of putting them all on a pan and baking them, put them on like a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. You can do multiple layers, just put a piece of parchment paper in between each one and lay the biscuits down in a single layer with parchment in between them and freeze them until they're solid. And then you can take them all, put them in like a big Ziploc bag, and all you have to do, you don't have to thaw them out. You just preheat your oven to 425, take however many biscuits out that you want to bake and put them in the pan, and then bake them for between 20 and 25 minutes. Do go ahead and pour the butter on top of them like we did. And I would say start at 20 and keep a look out on it. You want them to be nice and golden and raised. I'll show you what they look like when they're done, obviously, but it's pretty simple. Now, I never really just need 2 biscuits. I really usually need a whole pan full, having a big family, so I don't usually do that, but it is kind of nice to have something ready-made that you can thaw out, that you can just cook a couple of them at a time. I ended up having to go a few extra minutes. This really depends on how big you cut them, how thick you cut them, the size of your pan, the weather that day. There we have it, looking lovely. You can see my one I pieced together from the end pieces. We just call our ugly food rustic. People think it's on purpose. Now keep in mind, this is the super basic recipe. Like, you can go a lot of different places from this. You can mix cheese in to this dough. Just make sure it's good and cold, freshly shredded cheese. I'd say for a batch this size, you'd put like maybe half a cup to a cup of shredded cheese. You don't want to go too much. Is there such a thing as too much cheese? Theoretically, no, but for baking purposes, it might get a little weird. Also, chopped jalapenos with the cheese if you're feeling froggy, definitely. Fresh herbs. You could do cinnamon. I personally probably wouldn't do a lot of sugar in them just because the baking with sugar might kind of mess with the texture, but maybe you could. But this, my friends, is a biscuit. Good and large. And here's the real test. So we want texture on the outside and a nice steamy, flaky, layered middle. Do try not to burn your mouth when these come out of the oven, but definitely enjoy them hot with a slathering of honey butter, or mix that cinnamon and sugar in with the butter, cinnamon, sugar, butter. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with a biscuit, and they're all very good. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today and all the days you do. God bless you. Until next time.